Hi everybody, welcome back to Sunday Seminar. Today I am kind of doing two things because every day, no matter what, I come across another randomized controlled trial talking about processed food. And I've been hesitating to really make a stand about processed food because so far the data kind of seemed out there to me. If you look at Brazil, they labeled a hamburger processed food because of you serve it with fries and a Coke. And so they just kind of grouped food together. No one could really decide what processed food was. And so I just kind of was like, oh, just eat whole foods as a matter of principle, but I didn't really see the data coming out. Well, lately they've got a couple of randomized controlled trials going. One in particular is pretty exciting. It's by a researcher named Kevin Hall, and you can look him up. He's pretty famous. He's come up with a lot of different nutrition studies, and he has a study going. They're about halfway through, and what they're finding is that the group that is eating the lowest amount of processed food is on average eating 1,000 calories less a day. And these are people who are fed freely. So there's no restriction. The diets are roughly equal in carbohydrates, fat, and protein, but they just are allowed to eat to their hunger. So I thought we'd briefly kind of touch on some main points of that study, and I'll link that study below and to a podcast where he's talking about the different randomized controlled trials going on. He really has a sense of urgency here because what he's finding through all of these studies is that the processed food environment that we're living in, that we're feeding our children, this is contributing to the obesity epidemic. They're not really sure of the mechanism of it. They believe that it's because these ultra-processed foods cause you to be more hungry. And if you remember a couple weeks ago, we talked about how processed foods give you the munchies just like cannabis. It kind of makes sense. So everything is culminating, pointing in the right direction, saying, look, we know what's going on here. We need to eat less processed food. And if you take away anything from this video today, that's it. If you can get processed food out of your diet, do it. Every single little bit counts. All right, let's dive into this study. So they took a group of people and split them into 4 groups, and they put them into a metabolic ward for a month. And these people lived there and ate freely. So we can go through each of these and explain what each one means, but we'll just run through them real quick. Let's talk about the 4 groups. 1, minimally processed diet, low in non-beverage energy density, and low in hyperpalatable foods. So that's what they're calling ultra-processed food, is hyperpalatable foods. The second group is ultra-processed diet, high in non-beverage energy density and high in hyperpalatable foods. Ultra-processed diet, high in non-beverage energy density and low in hyperpalatable foods. And ultra-processed diet, low in non-beverage energy density and low in hyperpalatable foods. So what does this mean? Minimally processed diet. So that means, whole foods, chicken, fish, grains, rice, beans, quinoa, fresh vegetables, fruit, even yogurt is considered minimally processed. Pretty much all food we have access to is processed in some kind of way, unless you're eating just completely, make everything yourself. But even bread would be considered some kind of processed food. But that would be considered minimally processed if it only has a few ingredients. The shelf life is really, really short. And then low in hyperpalatable foods. So the hyperpalatable foods are anything with the seed oils in it. Chicken tenders, French fries, your Starbucks peppermint mocha. These are hyperpalatable foods. And then the high in non-beverage energy density. What does that mean? High in non-beverage energy density is just high caloric content of the food. So if you're taking an equal weight of something, the high energy density food would be something that's deep fried, for example. That's high energy density. So they did do one group that was ultra processed food, but low in energy density. So we're looking at processed food that's low fat. And then low in the hyperpalatable, so low in those seed oils, those kind of junk foods. All right, so let's go on to the next section. They asked them to rate their appetite, and there was really no difference in the appetite rating. They asked them to report the pleasantness of the food. Again, not very much difference. And then they looked at the outcomes. And the outcomes were that the group that had the low energy density, low hyperpalatable foods, the processed foods, ate on average 1,000 calories less per day. What was interesting was that fourth group, the group that ate the hyperpalatable foods but low in energy density, basically low fat processed food, they ate less on average but not as much less as the group that ate mostly minimally processed food. The group, when they started, was tasked to not try to lose weight. They just said, eat freely, eat till you're full, and we'll just see how it shakes out. Surprisingly, the only group that lost a significant portion of body fat was the group that ate the minimally processed food. So kind of an interesting take there. If you're in a pinch, eat the low-fat processed food. So if you're looking to lose body fat, you want to stay away from processed food. So this brings me into my second section of this little video, which is to talk about satiety. And this kind of plays into this same idea that ultra-processed foods do not give you satiety, and they kind of sabotage your weight loss. So high satiety foods are whole foods, whole grains, fruits, vegetables, high fiber foods. And I'll post a list below with some ideas for easy to make recipes because, we're all busy people. We need to make sure that we're setting up our food environment to make this easy for us. So get that processed food out of your house. And also, let's have a kind of a repertoire of recipes that you can use at any time if you need to throw something together. So let's talk about high satiety foods and why they matter. Okay, so satiety, first of all, is that feeling of fullness, that feeling of satisfaction you get after you eat. And that's really the goal we're looking for when we eat. If you find yourself hungry after you ate, even if it's a couple of hours later, you really need to think about what you ate the last time you ate and evaluate it for its satiety level. Because if you ate a 500 calorie bag of Doritos 2 hours ago and you're starving, you made a bad choice. And you need to think, okay, I'm not going to blame myself here, but next time I am not going to choose that. And the thing about satiety is that if you are satiated, if you don't feel hungry, you're not going to overeat. People who are hungry eat. If you're not hungry, you won't eat. Sometimes you might do some mindless snacking. You're stressed or you're sad or you're really happy for whatever reason, emotions play into that. That's a separate issue, but it often is intertwined. That if you're, mindlessly eating, you're also eating food that's not very satiating. We need to remember that. And I know I keep banging on about this, but the more you know, the better you're going to do in this. The satiety scale is a framework that you can use to evaluate what you're eating. So you don't have to do a trial and error with every single thing you eat. Like, oh, did that make me feel full? No, I'm just going to give you a list. And if you stick to the list, you'll do okay. The satiety scale ranks food on how satiating they are. And high satiating foods help you feel full longer. And that's our goal. That way, when you're ready to get off the GLP-1, if you're on one, or if you're trying to do weight loss naturally, you can instead of using willpower to try to lose weight, you can use tools in your toolbox. And this is a major tool, the satiety scale. If you learn this tool, you incorporate it into your life, everything in this weight loss journey is going to be easier. I guarantee it. Let's talk about high satiety foods. These are potatoes, eggs, oatmeal, lean meats, fruits, and vegetables. Low satiety foods are chips, candy, pastry, sugary drinks, fried food, fast food. So this really isn't about calories alone. It's about the quality of the food you're eating and the way your body processes the food. And this plays right into that study we covered at the beginning of this talk, was that what Kevin Hall is seeing in his lab is the same thing that we will experience in our lives if we make these choices. We don't live in a place where you don't have access to food. We live in America. There is so much food everywhere. We have to be the ones that decide. This is a free country. I'm not really interested in controlling people. I mean, seriously, if you want to eat McDonald's and be morbidly obese, whatever, go do it. But if you want to lose weight, I'm telling you how to do it. You've got to change your diet. Let's talk about the benefits of the satiety scale, using this as a tool in your toolbox. 1, it's easier to control your weight. You feel full, you're just naturally going to eat less. You're going to make healthier choices, your gut health. You're going to lower your risk of cardiovascular disease and cancer. And this is a sustainable habit. This is something, once you get used to doing it, it's not about restriction. It's just about eating smarter. And, as a side note, my kids have grown up on whole foods. We never ate out. We used to live basically off the grid. And so it was a half an hour to the grocery store one way, driving 50 miles an hour. So we had to make everything at home. And I did. And one time they went to Taco Bell with their friends. It was somebody's birthday party or something. And the mom texted me and said, I cannot believe they've never had Taco Bell. Well, so my kids don't like fast food. They don't. They never grew up with it. They never acquired the taste for it. The smell of McDonald's just set them off. If we were on a road trip trying to eat somewhere, forget about it. They hated it. So you can lose that taste for that hyper-processed food, hyperpalatable food. It just takes time. And if you have kids at home, this is the perfect time to cut that stuff out of their diet, because they will grow up and have a taste for whole natural foods, and you won't have to do this big teenage fight of trying to take away their bag of Doritos. Let's talk about how you would go about doing this high satiety diet. First of all, you want to prioritize protein. Every meal should have some kind of protein in it. It helps you feel full longer. So we're talking about a lean protein in every meal: chicken, fish, eggs, tofu if you're vegetarian. You want to pack in the fiber. Fiber is fruits, vegetables, whole grains. They will help you stay full. And then add volume with low-calorie foods. So if you want to start off your meal, say you're really hungry, you're just voracious, you just can't calm your hunger, you might want to start off your meal with a big salad, possibly a bowl of soup, some watermelon, some cut up cucumber, something like that that has a high water content is going to help fill you up before you get to the main event, and then you're unlikely to overeat at the main event. Now this requires you paying attention to your satiety cues, but over time, just like that study showed, you will consume less calories, up to 1,000 less a day. I mean, that's remarkable. If you're eating 1,000 less calories a day, holy moly. I mean, let's do the math on that. Let's do it right now. Okay, 1,000 less calories a day times 7. That's 7,000 calories a week. That is 2 pounds of fat per week. Guys, it's real. Eat real food, not too much. It's kind of the old saying. The last thing you want to do is really try to eliminate low satiety foods from your diet. So if you're drinking soda, cut it out or switch to the sugar-free soda. I know there's some controversy there, but if it's something you really have to have, just drink the sugar-free soda. Limit sugary snacks, fried food, fast food. I don't know. Last time I went on a road trip, we stopped at Starbucks and I had this little bacon Gouda sandwich thing, which definitely was the victim of shrinkflation. And I was hungry like an hour later. I mean, it was just the most worthless 300 calories I've eaten in a really long time. So I don't recommend trying to feed yourself on food through a window, a bag, or a box. Okay, guys, if this resonates with you, let me know. I'm really excited about this topic. I think it's something that we can come back to. Maybe in the live session, we can talk about how we might get this in action, because all I did was tell you, hey, eat real food. But the real nuggets of truth, the things that are going to make the difference are going to be you actually doing it. So how do we get there? I am going to post some recipes and some meal ideas and a list of the high satiety foods and the foods to stay away from, but still it's incorporating this into your everyday life. I'm very grateful that you're here. If you found this video helpful, like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and share it with somebody who's trying to meet their health goals. All right, we'll talk next week. Take care.